without further ado, let me get started. One of the things about, the Reuzel method and the way we cut in Reuzel is that, there is a perfect haircut, sort of, and a perfect head, inside this perfect head of hair. Basically what we have to do is just sort of remove all the hair that doesn't belong to kind of get to where you need to be. So I'm going to start. I added a little bit of the hair tonic in the water bottle. And you start by just wetting his hair down. And this is as important as part of the haircut as anything, is that you really want to start to see what the hair is going to do and how it's going to live and where it's going to be. Do something so make sure I don't fall and kill myself. Okay, so as we have it wet down a little bit now, like I said, what you really want to kind of look at is to see wave patterns and to see growth patterns and to kind of see, especially when you have a patron that hasn't had a haircut in such a long time, right? There could be a lot, and this is the first time I've cut his hair, so there's a lot of potentially hidden things in there that I don't really know about, and I don't want to be surprised by cutting hair off and saying, uh-oh, I didn't know that was going to happen, sort of a thing. So you really want to do an analysis of the hair. Like I said, really combing it, see how it's going to live, see it's, that he has a bit of a wave that, can kind of use to our advantage. Flipping out here in the back as well. I mean, he's got a lot of bulk that's ultimately going to be removed, but you can see how it's just, this front is really going to shape up nicely. So, really kind of combing the hair to kind of see what it's going to do before you kind of get in and really start cutting is so very, very important. So with Reuzel, the first thing that we do is we separate the interior from the exterior, right? We're not using clips or guards or combs, but we are using a baseline type thing. And following it usually from the temple. You find that by head up straight. I mean, there's a couple things that are important when you're looking at cutting hair. There's a couple different positions that are so very important as well. One of them is chair position. You're working below the round of the head. You want to make sure that his chair is up a little bit. Because you want to work as to your sternum as possible, right? You don't want your arms above or too low. If your arms are too low, you have a tendency to round. You kind of want to work in a very square method when you're working. So you find this by two flat planes inverted into the widest area of the head. And we're going to create this baseline. So there's chair position, head position, which is very important because if we're trying to create a square shape. I don't want his head tilted in any different direction in order to kind of do that. If his head is sort of tilted toward me and I'm cutting a flat shape, as it comes up, I've created a graduation and vice versa, right? So chair position, head position, body position. There again, with every single section, you're going to sort of walk around your client in order to sort of work towards your sternum. Once again, it's sort of like the very sort of roboticness of barbering and cutting. The importance of this is to make sure you're cutting a very square shape. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. And then the last and final is hand position. This is, these are going to be the primary tools, which is, clipper and a comb. This is the one that creates the shape, right? So it's your left hand if you're right-handed, or vice versa if you're left-handed. This comb and this hand position is really what dictates the shape of your haircut, right? So between chair, head, body, and hand position, you have the best chance of making a square masculine shape, which is exactly what we want to create on this. So, you know, David's got gorgeous hair. I'm thinking, just because of the, you know, he has some hair, and it does, you know, does some really nice things, that I'm going to work with more of like a long trim pump on him. I think that just the beautiful head of hair that he has, you know, I'm not a fan of cutting hair off just for the sake of cutting it off. I think you're kind of looking at, you know, who he is and what he has to kind of start with. But there's definitely a lot of hair that needs to come off, especially sort of the back. Because one of the things about this is that with the long trim, we're keeping things longer toward the side, so you kind of get that flow back, but we'll still taper the neckline. And that's sort of the beauty of a baseline, right? You're starting at the baseline. Now I'm in complete control of this entire haircut, right? If I kind of go through holding in a C shape, and this first pass, pulling everything up, making sure you're parallel to your section. You're not below or above. You're making sure, you're cutting as square as possible. And I like to start above the mid-ear, right sort of where the ear meets the head. Adjustable bladed clipper. When I'm working over the comb, I have them closed. When I'm working, you know, some tapering, I can work with it open. But when I'm working with over the comb, I'm working with a closed clipper blade, because that will give me the most amount of tension, and tension equals accuracy, right? So I want a nice, clean cut. So clipper blade will be closed, working about the mid-ear, coming up, and then moving forward, and just following this around, having my guide and my comb working parallel to my section. There's the guide. All the way toward, angling toward the tendon on the other side. All right? This becomes your guide for the entire rest of the haircut, right? So now what I do below that is completely up to me, right? As opposed to starting at the bottom. As soon as you start at the bottom and work up, you've committed the entire haircut based on this length down here. To me, the most important part, where do you start a haircut, right? When I still cut, you know, a lot of women's hair as well. So you cut a bob, what's the most important part? You create that line along the neck, that becomes your guide for the entire haircut. With the man's hair, you know, creating the masculine square shape, removing the bulk from the interior is the most important part of the haircut. So that's where we're going to start, by eliminating this bulk through the widest area of the head. We've all had guys come in and like, you know, I like my hair just getting puffy here. Well, of course it is, because that's the widest area of the head. That's what's going to grow out and look the fullest first. So we're going to lean that out. Now, by taking that baseline, here's the freedom and the flexibility that I have by doing that is, you know, I can leave everything below that longer and still maintain, you know, more of a fender type of a look, but I've created the leanness, I've created the squareness, and the masculinity of that. You know, I can do a razor fade underneath that. Kind of whatever I want to do, but it's not going to disrupt the integrity of the haircut that I've already established. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, good. So like I said, with this one, I'm going to keep it a little bit on the longer side, because I want to have a little bit more of that flow back. Now we're looking at, like I said, this becomes the guide for your haircut. Now that's coming down, but my new section is coming straight out from the head, right? So there again, I'm working down, but I'm working square. So you have that guide in the top of your comb, making sure your comb is perfectly straight. I'm standing a little bit off to the side of it just for camera purposes, but normally I would be standing right here so that way I can see exactly how I'm pulling everything out. You know, when I teach these classes, One of the first questions I ask anybody is, what do we do for a living? And most people raise their hands like, well, we cut hair, idiot. Why do you think we're here? We cut hair for a living. And I was like, yeah, kind of no. We comb hair, right? We comb hair for a living. Because if, anybody, the act of removing hair with a clipper, with your shears, with the razor, broken glass, doesn't really matter how the hair comes off. What really matters is how you comb it in relation to the head. So we spend our days combing hair in order to get the shape that we want. Whether it's coming straight out at 90, 90 is straight up. Whether we're working off of a horizontal, a vertical, a diagonal. I mean, all those things matter, right? All those things are very, very important to get the shape that we want. And then what we use to remove it, like I said, is sort of up to us, whether it's a clipper because we want to do something that's whether relatively quick or create something that's really short. Shears if you want to maybe leave something a little longer, or you can point cut. Razor, I mean, that all of a sudden now you're talking texture and you're talking all the sort of the diversity of it. But how this hair comes off the head is the most important part of any haircut, really. So back to that. So your guide, and making sure that you're working very square and straight. I said my background, and I started in the industry, was as a cosmetologist. So it wasn't until years later that I kind of got into cutting men's hair and really kind of fell in love with cutting men's hair and the true discipline of it. And that's truly what it is. It's a discipline. I mean, it is something that is very much somewhat robotic. When I had the great advantage of going to Rotterdam 7 years ago now and meeting with Lane and Bertus, and basically got a private class from Bertus, which is still go down as one of my greatest experiences ever. And he is probably one of the best men's hair cutters I've ever seen. One of the a dear friend and a great guy, and a taskmaster, and he beat me up terribly. He would step over me and was like, I'm cutting hair like this. He's like, get your arms up, man, get your arms up, work square. He was hollering at me the whole, because you can get lazy, right? Your arms kind of come down here, and you're working, and like I said, when your arms are down your side, you're cutting like this. Arms up. Working very robotic, working very square, working very straight. And, so I've really tried to work, very much like that to get the desired result, because that's really what it is. This is and working around your section, working around the head, so you're moving a lot. Spin around so you guys can see. One of the things that we say a lot with Reuzel is that there are many ways to get to the end result, and we're not saying ours is the best. We're definitely not saying ours is the only way, but this is the way that we do it. We find that we get probably the most consistent results all the time by working with the baseline, working down. I mean, it's completely counterintuitive if you've never done it before. Or again, kind of starting with anchor, pivot, suspend, kind of working up this way. I said, but then you have to kind of guess if you're starting here to where you end here, right? I like starting where I know I'm going to have a consistent point, and then everything in between comes off. It's a much easier way for me to go about doing that. And this is just the initial sketch. I'm removing bulk. I'm seeing what's happening with his hair. Now I said there's a lot of detail, finish work that I will do at the end. But basically what I want to do is make sure that I'm getting this sketch done so that I can start to see the shape build, creating the foundation, put the top on, and then do all the detail and finish work. So, it's actually, I'm stopping a lot, but it's actually a very quick and efficient way to get through a haircut. I mean, you can kind of get through this haircut relatively quickly by doing that. Because often what will happen is I teach at our salon, and a lot of the young learners get so caught up in the minutia of a haircut. They see this hair down here, and they really want to kind of get down and finish it. That they still have a whole bunch of hair that they have to cut. And and we're on a schedule, we're on a time frame, right? You want to make sure you kind of get through the haircut with some sort of efficiency, and then you go back and you do the detail work as opposed to working on one and kind of getting it absolutely complete and then moving on. Get that rough sketch in. You can start to see where where the sort of shape is happening. The fun challenge of working around a mask. That's something we've had to learn to do in these crazy times. There again, I'm not going to fuss too much with the rest of that until later, but I'm starting to see the shape and like the shape that we have going on there, right? So now we're going to move to the other side. And basically match the two to the center. There are methods you start on one side, you work your way all the way to the other side. There's some where you start on one side to the center back, to the other side of the center back. With the traditional higher horseshoe, I'll work myself all the way around. But with this parting pattern, with working with the baseline and actually following the natural curve of the head, all right, so it looks like a curved line. But if you actually take what you know is to be a very straight item, which is a comb, and you walk that all the way down, it's actually a very straight line just on a curved surface. Right? So that's how I kind of do a check too, to make sure that I'm creating a straight parting. So, and then I have a guide that I'm working to in the back. So once again, I'll start above the ear. And essentially do the exact same thing over again. Now, it's okay if you want to use your comb, take a measurement, if you will, and then walk it to the other side so you have an idea of where you're at, so you're one side's not longer than the other. So it's perfectly fine and perfectly acceptable. We all have a long side and a short side, and we shouldn't. We should just have both sides the same. And if you can, and if your fingers are big enough, I have what we call anchor point for stability. Right? There's some natural truths that I didn't invent, that just sort of live in the world. And one of them is distance equals length, like I talked about with head position. If your head's tilted towards you, away from you, you're going to get a different shape. And creating some sort of anchor point. There again, we all have guys whose head's on a swivel. They can't keep their head straight. They're always kind of moving. I have one of my clients say, they forget that you're right here because you look so much farther in the mirror. and have a client of mine that was like, so George, did you hear about, and fucking turn his head around in the middle of a haircut all the time. So, you know, kind of keeping their head straight. So I have this, so I know when he's moving, or if he's going to move, I can put a little bit of pressure on him to make sure that he's staying still. But when you're especially when you're working out in space, like we are with the long trim pomp, my comb is pretty much suspended out here. This also gives me consistency all the way through the haircut. So I kind of spin them around so you can see. Now here's my guide on the other side that I'm matching to, right? So here to the center back, and then you're going to, actually it's going to basically create a point in the middle. That point's not going to stay, but that's sort of how you check your balance. You're making sure you're kind of coming to a direct point. So. How's that? Good? I know that we've got people signing in from all over, so I want to give a couple shout outs. I think my friend Ian is from the UK. Hello, mate. You there? This, you know, this is weird, right? This is something that we've never done before. And, you know, usually when you do a class like this, you know, you're talking to the people that are in the room. And COVID has sort of given us this opportunity to speak to people around the world, which is really kind of cool. From Larkspur, California, to the UK, to, you know, I think Greg in DC. I mean, just, you know, I think my mom. Hi, Mom. You know, it's, as an educator, this has been very bizarre because, you know, we haven't been able to do nearly as much as we have liked to have done. You know, you know, PSC has been, you know, this is my second time here. You know, as always, one of the better distributors to kind of really kind of figure out a way to make it happen and then get it done and get it done correctly. You know, we've had these Facebook Lives, you know, on the Reuzel page since the beginning, you know, they're again, just trying to keep the message out there, just trying to keep people engaged, trying to keep people from being sort of complacent. I think it's one of the things that makes our industry so unique to so many others is that we thrive on education, or at least we should, right? You know, I'm in the 30+ year range now of doing hair, and you know, when I see something new, it just geeks me out. You know, you just keep learning, and you know, one of the opportunities of this sort of Zoom platform of whatnot. I mean, as grateful as I am to have you guys in the room, because last time you just do it to a camera, and there's really no feedback, there's no head nods, there's no smiles with your eyes and whatnot. It's a pretty flat medium, so to have some in the room, but the opportunity to then, you know, hear from people from around the world. I've watched Zooms from people that, you know, don't have to get on a plane to go to Japan to see somebody do something amazing. You don't have to get on a plane to Europe to go see something amazing. Or, you know, one of Patty's good friends, you know, Nick Arrojo in New York, and you get to see these guys on a regular basis. I mean, I think that's, you know, we've taken, you know, what the world has dealt, and we're making it better in a way. And it's a very, at least for me, it's a very exciting opportunity to do something and have it just sort of, you know, whether it's your message spread around the country or around the world. That's very cool. All right. And sometimes I could just get too chatty and cut hair and talk and forgot to cut hair. I have to do both at the same time every once in a while. Okay, so like I said, this is the initial sketch. This is the initial sort of below the round of the head. We call this the boring hair. Although it's not, you know. They call it the boring hair only because the method below the round of the head, excuse me, below the round of the head is generally the same. The only thing that changes is the length. Whether, as I said, you're doing sort of more of a long trim pomp or you want something a little bit longer so you're suspended, or you're doing a skin fade that's really close, how you get about it is exactly the same. It's just longer or shorter. So we call that the boring hair. But to me, it's probably the most fun because you get a lot of opportunities. Now we're going to move up into the interior. Are you guys staying for the clipper carnage? You guys are all staying for the clipper carnage? So yeah, so that's really what we have this class called Clipper Carnage that we developed. And you know, it's just all about clippers and getting individuals comfortable with clippers. When I was in cosmetology school, I never used a clipper once. I mean, I had one masculine haircut. If it didn't have corners, it wasn't masculine, and that was it. Everything I learned about clippers, I had to sort of seek out the knowledge after the fact. And so we really wanted to create a class that dove very, very deep into clippers and what they do and how they work and how to take them apart and put them back together and all the different things. So we call it Clipper Carnage, the not so boring hair, because everything is about the round of the head. So as we move up into the interior, we have there again a couple different sectioning patterns that we look at, because there's some things that, you know, as far as if this is the boring hair, this is the cool hair, right? This is the most important part of this haircut. Masculine haircuts are sort of this shape where they go shorter in the crown, longer toward the front. You kind of get that pompadour shape. So I want to take right from that section, we're going to create a little triangle. All right, because we're going to keep that out. I want to make sure that that's preserved till the very end and see how it's going to fit in. Then we're going to take a section that's from around the ear up over the top. So we're creating a series of little sections, little triangles. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3 on this side. Change my shears. I'm going to take a horizontal section. So once again, this baseline that I created underneath is now my guide as I'm moving up to the top. One of the huge considerations that you really want to take a look into is this recession area. Because we need, when you're putting hair up and you're pompadour and kind of getting hair back, you know, you want to account for hair there or not. And I can talk because I have the or not part of it. So you want to maintain a little bit more length through this front. Like I said, might not keep it, but you want to allow for it, because once it's gone, it's gone. So this again, starting above the mid-ear. There's my guide underneath. Coming out at 90 degrees, the guide is. Now as I'm moving forward, I'm just going to start to abandon that guide just a little bit to preserve length. So this is the hair cut too short. Create another haircut. You're screwed. It's too much. You want to preserve this length right here. Once again, there's your guide. You know, as I mentioned before, I do a lot of the teaching for our assistants in the salon in our men's program and barber program, and initially they hate me because again I'm kind of like that taskmaster, but hopefully they learn to like what I do, because basically I'm walking around and all I'm asking is, where's your guide? Where's your guide? Where's your guide? If you're not cutting with a guide, what the hell are you doing? What roadmap do you really have? So making sure you have a guide is so important. So now moving toward the back there again, I'm going to take a parting that follows the baseline parting just up. There's my guide on the underneath. Last section. All right, so starting to lean him out, still starting to maintain, length through the interior. There again, I'm kind of keeping this till the very end. So I'll do the same thing on this side. Take that sectioning pattern. Here's my guide. Just start to abandon the guide a little bit so it has a little bit, preserve a little more length toward the front. And then in the back. So eventually I'm going to have two guides, right? I'm going to have a guide, or actually three guides. I'm going to have a guide from the front, a guide from the underneath, and then a guide that I'm going toward in the back. So one guide is good, two is great, three, home run. Give yourself the best opportunity to be balanced. Pull this over. And I'm glad I left his hair a little bit longer. You can see as it's getting a little bit shorter, just by the natural texture and growth patterns, it's really starting to pop out and to poke out. So, a lot of that was, I was able to kind of see just by before I even started cutting with combing and how it was sort of coming out from the head a little bit more. So, David has that kind of hair that it's long or it's really short. In between is not going to work for him. All right, now we're going to join this front. So again, there's my guide. I want to preserve the length. And match it on this side. All right, last and final thing in the interior, there again, is that shape, right? So if I've got everything blended around to the baseline. Now I mentioned before, we're going from shorter to longer to get that increase in length. Here's my guide in the back. So this is that short area that, I'm not disrupting the shape that I've created there. I don't want that smacked flat in the back of the head look, so making sure that that's there. So basically it's like taking a mohawk section and continuing until, and here's the longest part in the front, which is what I want. And by pulling everything up, there again, it's traveling such a great distance that you're not disrupting the corners that you've created. Essentially, the sketch is now completed, right? I've taken the weight out. I've created a square, more masculine shape. Blow dry. You know, a great haircut, you need a blow dryer to do a great haircut, but a great haircut doesn't need a blow dryer to finish, right? That's sort of the whole point of this, is that, you know, is he going to blow his hair dry when he gets home? Probably not. He might, but probably not, and I don't expect him to. But what I want to do is I want to, you know, his hair is going to eventually going to dry. So I want to make sure that when his hair dries, even on its own, it's as perfect as can be. And so there's a lot of things that, you know, will come out in, you know, dry hair that you don't see in wet hair. You know, it was sort of an interesting part of there again. The COVID thing is that when we first opened our salon back up, you know, we took every safety precaution that we could. And one of the safety precautions that we did was we didn't allow blow drying in the salon initially. There again, we just wanted to feel everybody to feel safe. So we kind of came in and we did, you know, haircuts that we didn't blow dry. And boy, that was tough. You know, that was really tough because it's such an integral part of our craft is to blow dry hair and to see it finished before they walk out of the salon. So whether it's a man's haircut or whether it's, you know, that perfect sort of bob that you're creating, you'll cut it, you'll blow it dry, you'll check it and make sure it's perfect. When we couldn't do that, it really made it difficult to kind of just finish that haircut enough. So I'm glad that we're back to blow drying. I'm glad that I'm ever hopeful that we will continue to blow dry. Hell, I'm hopeful we just continue to stay open, for God's sakes. I mean, you know, the numbers are increasing, not only in Illinois, but around the world. And like everything else, we have a method for blow drying, just like we have a method for hair cutting. I mean, there are steps that we take. A vent brush. If he had really curly hair, I'd probably go with maybe more of a Denman brush to kind of smooth it out a little bit. But with his hair, I think a vent brush will work really well. And we're going to blow it dry in the same method that we cut it, from the sense we're going from short to long. Right, so I'm going to start in the back. This is a little Gamma Professional. My Demo, are you watching? My friend Demo from Montreal sent me this blow dryer. And I have just fallen in love with it. Oh my God, it's the lightest damn thing ever. And it really gets the job done in a hurry. So thank you, Demo. So again, unlike a woman's haircut where you're going to create volume and fullness through the crown, I want to kind of create some flatness to the bed. So I'm using the concentrator as well, making sure you're not burning them, but really you want to make sure that hair is dry, that base is dry. And then you just kind of keep adding some hair to that, create the flatness so you're getting that ultimate dry at the scalp and the lift that you need. So we go back, side, top, front. Chris, any online questions? Anything? I'm sorry?
Somebody had said they did the same thing, no blow dries, but they can be open.
Are they now? Are you guys all blow drying now? Yeah. Did you initially? Sue, you did it right from the get-go? Dividers? Yeah, everybody kind of did it a little bit different, and that was sort of, I guess that's this whole, this whole thing is that whatever works. We have a pretty big, we have 3 locations, and they're really pretty big, so we have a lot of people. So that was sort of one of our challenges. You would think if we had, more room, it would be easier, but it actually was a little more difficult. Are you doing beard trims or not? Oh, you are? Field? Yeah, we're still not doing beard trims. It's called Gamma Professional. There you go. Got it zoomed in there. So when you get to the front, this is where you want to get your volume. And from a profile too, I go sort of forward and up and follow that blow dryer around. So you can see how you come forward and then back as opposed to just straight back. That's less flattering. You want to have, if you can, hair to kind of forward from the, and then over and back. Now that the haircut is dry and the shape is starting to be created, this is when we'll go in with our blenders, right? This is when you kind of go in with the blending shears. And this is, any bits of weight that you see that you couldn't see when the hair was wet, it starts to pop out, and kind of, especially like through this baseline area. And if you want to leave some length but still take it out, with the barber shears, the barber blenders, the flat blade is at the bottom and the cutting blade is on the top, so you can quite easily sort of, and especially with this wave that he has in his hair, I don't want to blow it out completely straight. I mean, he's got this beautiful head of hair. I just want to take out some of the bulk without making it too straight. This is that point that I created with my baseline. I want to eliminate that, but you can see how low that is to make sure I maintain that masculine head shape. And then I'll go over to the top there again, making sure I'm going with this proper angle. And as his hair is dry, you can see there's still quite a bit of bulk on top. He has a good amount of hair, but because of the color, if it is too long, it's going to be transparent and sort of see-through. So I want to kind of bring it down a little bit. Sorry, I'm giving the cameraman fits, spinning them around. Catch me if you can. Catch me if you can. Patty, please do.
Much broken down into like 3 sections. Right here, top there is ball production, the middle is support, and the bottom is the lens. So the beginning, like we're just going to stay on the outside of the fence, we're going to ball production. If you feel like it's still kind of just falling flat in the front, then you can kind of maybe work a little bit more like in the middle area, and like build that support a little bit more. If it's just too much, then yes.
Thanks, Patty. No, and to sort of demonstrate exactly what Pat was saying, for those of you that maybe are at home that couldn't hear exactly what he was saying, is that the hair shaft really has like 3 sections, right? So if you pull this up, I've been working primarily on the top third, just to sort of soften the ends and kind of get it to blend, right? To take a little bit of the bulk removal. If I really wanted this to stand up, I'd go into the middle here, right, to kind of create a bit of a cushion, right? And this is basically support. You have these shorter hairs in the middle that are supporting the length you have on top. And then, very rarely, but will happen, was if you're going all the way down to the scalp, you're creating collapse, right? Because there's no hair there to support any length. But if that's what you want, to kind of remove that hair so this hair completely collapses over. So, different different parts of the head. You know, there again, it's kind of like combing, right? Like I talked about earlier, having, you know, a very distinctive reason why you're pulling the hair out in the way you're doing it. Having a very distinctive reason why you're at a section of the hair that you are, you know, ends, middle, base. You know, all start, you know, and then there again, what happens is that you can recreate the shape.
Did you use grooming spray or surf tonic?
I use grooming spray. I use the grooming spray. There again, kind of just giving a once over to see where there are any bits of weight. And then I'll go across in the other direction to blend it. It's nice having a monitor so I can actually have a bit of a mirror too. That's nice. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go back around the perimeter and do some of the detail and finish work. Now that the foundation is laid, the top is set, it's blow dried, I kind of have this thing looking good. Now I get to go around and do the detail and finish around the perimeter. I said, you know, truly at this point, if you can see the shape that's there, you know, to go in all the way to the scalp and kind of create a razor fade all the way around the bottom is perfectly doable without disrupting the integrity of the haircut that I just put in. Right? But now I get to choose that at this point as opposed to starting at the beginning and just sort of guessing where I'm going to get to at the top. But with his hair and his hair texture, I'm going to keep it tidy around the perimeter, of course, but not bald fade. I'm going to open up my clippers a little bit to do some freehand. You know, his neckline is a bit wonky. My favorite line is, I've never met a hairline I couldn't cut off. Right? And sometimes that's your only strategy. You know, they've got swirls, they've got, you know, it bends to the right, it bends to the left. You can sit there and fuss with it and fight with it all day long. Cut it off, start over. You know, I can, there again, you can kind of, you know, cut this hairline all the way down to a nice taper. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's, there again, if we're going to a bald fade, it just means that we're just kind of creating a nice taper along the neckline. You're going to open it up with just a couple clicks. It's not all the way closed. Kind of about, you know, 3 clicks on the babblish just to fan. There again, in fanning, you master this technique will make your life so much easier, because there again, you can kind of get in and, you know, one of the things that we at Scorum at the barbershop in Rotterdam, it's not easy to get fired. You know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll are almost encouraged. But one of the things that can get you fired immediately is to block off a neckline, right? So a tapered neckline, first of all, it looks more masculine. It grows out so much nicer. And there again, it's like, this is his natural hairline. Go with it. So fanning is a technique, whether sometimes I'll use my finger as sort of like a pivot, so I have some stability. And you know, it's a very light grip. Is that Patty?
Sometimes with fanning, it's all very hard.
I'm sorry? Good question. The question was, what do I do if they ask for a blocked off neckline? I talk them out of it, and I tell them why. There again, I tell them that, you know, this square line. First of all, square line will create more width. On most men, you want to kind of create more of a slimming effect around the neckline. And second of all, I tell them how much more longevity there is in the haircut, because with all the neck hair, you're going to have a straight line and then a little fuzz underneath. And what we offer in our salon, and I know a lot of salons and barbershops do, are complimentary neck trims in between haircuts. So you know, they're again, I think a lot of guys think that, you know, if it's not blocked off, it has to be a high fade, because nobody has done a classic sort of taper where you can kind of go from hair to no hair in a space without seeing a line of demarcation, right? So they've never experienced that. So when you assure them that, yes, in fact, you can do that, you can make it look nice, and then, you know, you can give them a neck trim to kind of clean up in between time, as I said, that's sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and if that's all they've had, that's all they've known, they've never known this, and it's our job as a professional then to talk them into something that is better. You know, yeah, I mean, that's kind of our job, really, I think. So, and if they're absolutely, positively adamant, I mean, at the end of the day, they are our patron, they are paying us to do, you know, what they want us to do. I mean, I will, you know, fight tooth and nail to try to talk them out of it. But if they are adamant, you know, but it's not something that I'm happy to do. All right. And one last thing here is, we don't do, you know, I said beard trims and whatnot, but it's been a minute since those eyebrows have been taken care of. I can tell, Dave. Yeah, he's very happy up there on the top row too. You know, and the final thing is we're sort of, you know, winding up is product, right? You know, we have a lot of choices, and you know, personally, I like on gray hair some shine. You know, we have these amazing, you know, like our Extreme Hold Matte is probably my favorite product. It's our #1 seller in the line. It just is the most versatile product and does amazing things. This is not my go-to on really gray hair. There again, because it's more of a matte finish. I said I like to see gray hair to have a little bit more shine. Trish, I know it's 11 o'clock. We're just wrapping up. So get all those little hairs out. I'm going to go with a little bit of the pink as a foundation. All right, there again, this is probably one of my favorites, and it's not necessarily, you know, the shiniest, but it has a tremendous amount of hold. And I like with his hair I wanted to keep it long, but it has a tendency to be a little bit floppy. The sides have a tendency to kind of pop out a little bit. So the strength of the pink, emulsifying it in your hands. Excess, I take off at the back and really massage it in from scalp to ends. Taking a wider teeth comb there again, because once you have it in, now you need to distribute it through. And it's because it's so thick, don't go right in with fine teeth. You're going to start yanking it out by the root. So really, unless you don't like them, but I like Dave. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the red on top. It's a great thing because you can layer the products, right? The red has the shine, so this is what I want. But I wanted to, there again, humidity has a factor, right? This is a water-based, and this is an oil base. Because of the curl that he has in his hair, if I put the red on first, all this sort of thing is going to collapse into a curl. So I want to sort of basically put like a buffer of oil, like an anti-humectant of the pink, on, and then layer the water base over top to get some of that shine that I want. And this is where I can just sort of fall into a rabbit hole with combing. I love this pick because you can kind of get in and actually lift hair from the base. Are there any questions? Comments? Smart remarks? Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys. Thank you all out in virtual Zoom land, Facebook Live. Right now, go from me to the Reuzel page. We have a lot of education today. Our Scumbassador, Brooklyn, from the Pacific Northwest, is coming out of hibernation to do his first Facebook Live. So tune into that. You get a double dose of Reuzel haircuts. He is guaranteed to entertain. He might even break out into song. I know Brooklyn, sometimes he sings, sometimes he dances. And then tomorrow we have Cheeseburger, who is our David, who is our Scumbassador from the East Coast, is doing a Facebook Live as well. So lots of education going on. There you are, man. Appreciate it.
Great.
Thank you.